Just going to try to talk a little bit about the philosophical development of reasoning. Philosophical development of reasoning, and many some will know that filio is associated with um, to some degree of brotherhood. I realize that the battlegrounds is ideological and the war is psychological. Just it over one's philosophical views, what you have in view, what you have in range. Your perspective becomes your perspective, and trying to find relevance in this on this plane of existence, logically. And I want to also try to utilize the English Bible, if I may use that, the Biblio, actually Old and New Testament, which really means to strike a balance, you know. But and in developing uh, philosophical or the philosophy of reasoning, some will get to the will go to ancient uh, Egypt or Kemet. Some would associate that also with Plato and Socrates, primarily, and many others as well. But let's try to deal with the evolutionary process of it to where we are, or to where I am, I should say, today, in the extraction of teachings of language, uh, either would be Arabic, um, English, uh, and some Greek and some Hebrew. Um, I did not mention Bantu or the language of Giz, Ethiopian language of Giz. There's some um, uh, script is written and some is just oral. Some people have written text and some do not have. But that's someone who's a scholar can talk about that. Yes. Um, just want to read that text, I believe 320, and some will call it the book of Revelation. I'm not, I don't get caught up in promoting any religion, or any. Only thing I promote is the value of self-worth. Mandate is to cultivate the potential of knowledge that is in us all, and try to communicate the mandate and the motto. The motto is communicate with precision and clearer image to the world through 5 channels of communication. These are the 5 pillars in which I build on. One is understanding. The other is tolerance. The third is temperance/temperament. And the other is confidence and respect. Yes. Some brother wrote in the book, Men of Understanding, People of Understanding. Yes. And what was utilized from that particular text was something that has come from, possibly I believe was the Quran, and possibly 3:7. Our Lord, make not our hearts to deviate after thou hast guided us, and grant us mercy. From thee surely thou art the most liberal giver. And we go to school, and many people trying to study, liberal arts. The liberal arts. This developing one's philosophical reasoning. It should be the basis of for unity. Some would say show this the basis of all religions. I don't promote any religious belief, but know some say religion is sincerity. But yes, we want to see how the development of one's philosophical reasoning, how it affects us psychologically or mentally. It says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice, and the door, open the door, and I will come in to him and will sup with him, and he with me." It's like an invitation. But what is this invitation to? It says, "Behold," something that you can grasp or see, or something that could capture your imagination, that you hold on to and still holding on to. Some could be still holding on to the past, And in the words of Booker T. Washington, he said, "Just drop your buckets right where they are." The past is just a reference point. It's not a place, a resident. So, behold, I stand at. Stand is a positioning, a posture that you are either safeguarding or that which you are upholding at the door. The door. Let's look at that in the Arabic language, if I may use Quranic Arabic or Arabia. But it talks about the Al-Bab, the door. But when you put it in that language, it doesn't mean door. And I may be saying something wrong. It's no pressure, but you'll get the point. When it comes to developing one's philosophical reason, and being able to reason with progression, and we have to realize instead of regression, because some things we are upholding doesn't make any sense at all. Yes, and it affects us psychologically because we want to find a place, find some relevance, and really develop our morals. You know what I'm saying? Because dealing with one's behavior. So this position that one is taking at the door says it means more than a door. It says the word Ilyul first, and Al Ba'ab means the door, the first door, or the first of the doors. It's plural now. You ever think about the first knock that a person has on you? And when a person has a knock on you, he or she will use that to his or her advantage because they may see it as a weakness and exploits your weakness. And it has to do with one's philosophical, the way that developing one's philosophical way of reasoning. Yes, because it becomes a behavior. The first of doors. It's like when we have been introduced to immoral or unhealthy and bad behavior due to outside influence and toxins, we leave that door open. And that will be the first of many doors that will continuing to open and influx us, and therefore it begins the flood of more intoxic, unhealthy, and unproductive behavior that comes into play. Yes. So, the first of doors, or the first door of men, of the first door, and it means, he says it means men of moral logic. Men of moral logic. Now that sounds like an antithesis, like I am an opposite of what I just said early. But remember, we're talking about developing one's philosophical way of reasoning. And we want to reason with progression rather than regression. So we want to dissect this thing when it comes to developing one's philosophical manner in which one reasons, how it affects one's mentally, psychologically, emotionally, or what have you, when it comes to our actions. Because if you open a door to men of immoral and illogical behavior, then those immoral and illogical behavior starts to govern one's behavior. And when something is governing and controlling your behavior, rather you governing it and you controlling it philosophically, ideologically, emotionally, psychologically, or mentally, or what have you, then there lies a mental problem and a issue that people try to compensate for. And when people try to compensate for that, it means that ones go about displaying his money, wealth, and power as greatness to hide his or her inner weakness. And that takes on a form of narcissism and a personality disorder. Yes. In which a person exaggerates his or her own self-importance. So and that be the case, we're dealing with borderline personality disorder. Is that the case? A mental disorder characterized by the instability in mood, behavior, and functioning. Does this connect with something called post-traumatic stress disorder? The mental health and condition that develops following a traumatic event characterized by intrusive thoughts about an incident, recurrent distress, anxiety, flashback, avoidance, and similar situation. Then we deal with anxiety disorder, a group of mental illness that cause constant fear and worry, characterized by sudden feeling of worry and fear and restlessness. And then it leads to automatic distorted thoughts, mind reading. You assume that you know what people think without having sufficient evidence of their thoughts. He or she thinks I am a loser, a loser. And you start to think, you continue to think that about yourself. So we're dealing with developing one's philosophical reasoning. Okay. The first door in men or human is devoted, this is the connection, it is devoted to the reasoning. And if one is unable to reason, he or she has become mentally incapacitated. He is irrational. In fact, about it, his emotional reasoning, another automatic distorted thought. You let your feelings guide your interpretation of reality. So I feel depressed, therefore my marriage is not working out. This is developing one's philosophical reasoning and justifying and rationalizing his or her actions and behavior. Is something that is knocking at the door. Now, let's look at it in this way. And if there is a knock on you in that manner, in that way, people will justify their behavior, and then therefore they will justify locking you up or isolating you and putting you in an environment that is conducive to your irrational, emotional, psychological, mental, emotional instability. So you have a bunch of people, for the most part, in a community who have this emotional, psychological, mental, emotional, immoral, illogical, irrational instability and become accustomed to it. Yes. And those who know that, they become accustomed in their mind and rationalize in their mind that they don't see anything different in you and in your change in your behavior. So therefore they will create certain schools, they will create certain institutions, yes, to further exploit that or channel you in a manner, in a way that will perpetuate and continue to promote this type of behavior. Yet the change is on the individual, because if the individual does not see an issue with his or her action, he or she will not change. Because this is how he has become to determine that which is logical, which is illogical. This is how he or she philosophically has developed his or her way of reasoning and justifying irrational, immoral, unproductive behavior. So this is the knock. Okay. That the reasoning of that logic governs one's human beings are to behave. The writer goes on to say, I said moral, but it's a little bit more than moral, than just moral. You know, they was talking about one time, I remember the Irish, I think it was of a group of people said they was acting the way that they were, there was some morals, spiritually deprived. No, they was being economically exploited. But you see in the thinking of how another group philosophically develop their way of reasoning and how they see things, and they think people are supposed to see the things the way that they see them, that they want them to see it. But yet your words say something and your actions say something different. It represents a sense of exclusivity. Yes. So people become ostracized and marginalized. Very exploited, very manipulative. So, and then we're going to look at what we call crime. The biggest crime you could commit is fraud. That's another game for itself. So, that is a logic that evolves. Logic evolves. Now, is it to a point that our human tendencies are being exploited, and then that which is natural becomes unnatural? Huh? And then some would say it is the first exercise of reasoning for human beings. The first thing they wanted to deal with was human behavior. The first thing that to make us relevant is to look at not only human behavior, but the behavior of the cosmos. How they are interdependent of one another. They are in harmony with one another. And then that applies to human behavior. Humans want to find relevance. So in human behavior, so they would justify that as a manifest destiny, that this is the humanity that I'm going to give to the world. And they create things such as, royalty or exclusivity, when royalty is really how you treat each other. So human behavior, because human beings, if they do not accept, this is key, some discipline for their behavior, how can they perform in any field of discipline if they cannot discipline themselves? So you can teach people other languages, but you can't teach them how to govern that they must learn for themselves. So we must learn how to govern ourselves. So the owners and possessors of the door by a certain reasoning. The owners of the door. They are the first at the door because they are the first at the door. They are the owners of the door. This is the philosophical language and reasoning that supports life and nature. This is what it is, the reasoning that wants to serve and uplift nature and life. Men of logic. People of logic. Marcus Garvey came and said, uplift you mighty race. This is how he was developing his philosophical reasoning. But his philosophical reason could have been tainted and contaminated by the philosophical reasoning of another group of people who everywhere he went, he saw his own people in subjection to the philosophical reasoning of others. That's why no one has no monopoly on intelligence. When you start doing that, that means that we're dealing with another automatic distorted thought of an inability to disconfirm when you reject any evidence or arguments that might contradict your negative thoughts. For example, when you have the thought, I am unlovable, you reject as irrelevant any evidence that people like you. Consequently, your thought cannot be refuted. This is not the real issue. There are deeper problems there are other factors. There were deeper problems that was going on with Marcus Garvey. There are deeper problems that was going on with Frederick Douglass. There are deeper problems that is going on within us all. There are deeper problems that is going on with people who consider themselves to be naturalists. There are deeper problems that's going on considering themselves to be Muslims. There are deeper problems with people going on to consider themselves to be the Christians. There are deeper problems with those considering themselves to be politicians. There are deeper problems with those who consider themselves to be human. There are deeper problems. Behold, I stand at the door. It's a knock. That which is, in effect, something as a process or a action. It's like a undefined action. When I mean an undefined action, I mean some things we just do not know, but yet we uphold as if we do know. And we force that on other people, and then we start to put confidence in that, and we start to defend and fin and fostering and become accustomed to fostering foolishness and fostering things that we think we know and we really do not know. About ourselves, about this universe, about this world. But it says in that, it says, if any man hear my voice, the voice of reasoning, and open the door of reasoning, reasoning with progression, an invitation to say that, man, I don't know everything, that I have no monopoly on intelligence. Come, I will sup with him, I will eat, I will dine. That is hospitable. That means we can become friends for life. I will come in and sup with him, and he with me. That means we can work and eat and treat each other with honor, with dignity, with integrity, with respect. One with another. May we continue to find relevance with each other in the manner and way in which we treat one another in this development of philosophical reasoning through a dialectical process. Language was given to us that we'll be able to communicate and reason with one another. This creation was given to us as a benefit that we're able to learn how to reason with one another. The use of our faculties and our limbs was given to us that we be able to learn how to reason with one another. Never seen so much foolishness. Until next time, talk to you.